Today we're going to talk a little bit about career entrepreneurialism in the new economy, and this is based on a book that I have that came out just last year called The U Plan. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a little bit about where we are right now, and then my philosophy as to how I think you can best get yourself prepared to deal with the new economy and how to best get yourself back out there and find that job. A little background about me. I'm an organizational psychologist by training and also a certified executive coach. Most of my work is in management and executive development as well as in career transition. As I said, I go by the moniker of Dr. Woody, and I'm the author of the book, The U Plan. I'm also a columnist for Fox Business. I have a column that comes out every Monday afternoon on the foxbusiness.com website called The Career Hot Seat, where I talk about workplace issues as well as career transition. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. One of the things you'll see is a theme that I have that is woven throughout not only my book, but also throughout this presentation and any presentation I do, is this notion of the hot seat. The fact is, we are all in the hot seat, so to speak. Right now, we're facing one of the toughest economies we've ever faced in the history of this country. And the fact is the Great Recession has left us with 8 million jobs gone, nearly 14 million jobless right now, over 8 million involuntarily part-time, and about half those who are unemployed have been out of work for over 6 months. Most people are going to be going off of the unemployment benefits pretty soon. So we're in challenging times. And the reality is you cannot any longer wait for someone to bail you out. You can't rely on benefits. I don't think you can rely on government. You have to rely on yourself. And that's a big part of what I like to talk about in the U Plan is, not to sound all like preachy psychologist guy, but the fact is how do you take the reins for yourself? And so I really do believe that in these uncertain times, you've got to put yourself in the hot seat and take the reins of your own career for yourself. So when I talk about being in the hot seat, one of the, I would say the hallmarks right now of this new economy is the fact that there's a lot of ambiguity. And certainly given the election cycle we're in right now, we're going to have a lot of ambiguity for at least the next 12 months. I truly believe that it's no longer about chasing opportunities. It's about how do you create opportunities, which really means you're going to have to start thinking more like an entrepreneur. And that's why I call it career entrepreneurialism. I'm not saying everyone has to go out and start a business. What I'm saying is you have to think more creatively and entrepreneurially about how you approach creating value and demonstrating that value to others out there in the marketplace. And again, going back to my background in psychology, I truly believe it really begins with the process of introspection. And so that's really what the premise of this is about. If you'll notice here, the basis of my book and the philosophy that I preach, whether it's working with managers, executives, corporate teams, or anyone in transition, is you have to know yourself first and know really what you bring to the table to be able to get out of the hot seat. And I believe it's really about asking yourself 5 fundamental questions. And these questions are, as I have up here on the screen, the first one is, what are your values? Second is, what are your intrinsics? The third is, what are your passions? The fourth is, what is your essence or brand? And the fourth is, what is your roadmap for taking all this out there and landing a job? So I'm going to go through these 5 that I like to remember as VIPER, because I like to create some kind of mnemonic or acronym for everything because I have a bad memory. So I always remember it as VIPER, and these are the 5 questions that I want you to answer for yourself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what I mean by each of these questions, give you a little bit of something to think about as we go through these questions. And then the challenge to you is to be able to thoughtfully answer these questions so you can create a good package for yourself so that you'll be the person that stands out, that other people will remember, that will come to mind when an opportunity comes up in your network or in your extended network out there. So values. This is one that often gets overlooked. A lot of times when I ask somebody, tell me what your values are, they tend to struggle a little bit, kind of look at me funny, and then they say, well, and they give me a couple vague things. the reality is most of us really can't articulate our values. The fact is, your values are the compass that determine where you're going to go and how you make decisions, whether you're conscious of it or not. And the best thing you can do for yourself is have a conscious understanding of what you truly value, because that'll help you determine when to go right, when to go left. Values are typically considered those basic convictions or beliefs about what's good or right or worth, a sort of a principle, a standard, that quality you feel is worthwhile, that's personal. Values come from a lot of places, and it's important to understand where your values come from, and if you espouse the values that you truly believe in, or if you espouse values that have been instilled in you by parents, culture, religion, upbringing, or whatever. Values change over time. Anyone who has children knows that your values certainly change at that point in time. They are fluid, but it's important to be aware of them as you go. A simple test, if you really want to know, is this a true top 5 value for me? Ask yourself, are you willing to fight for it? Are you willing to sacrifice for it? And are you willing to pay for it? Because if it doesn't pass the test of these 3 questions, you can't really argue it's truly of value. So some examples. People love to use honesty and integrity as a value, yet if they are deceptive or lie, they really don't value it. Physical fitness and health is one that I love. I don't know how many times I've had someone tell me that that's one of their top 5 or top 10 values is being fit, physically able to do what I want to do, eating well, and then they go to McDonald's every other day, and maybe they get the Diet Coke, but still. So it's important to understand not only is something of value to you, but do you actually live it in your day-to-day life, or is it an aspirational value? That's something completely different. But the point is this, is your values are what drive your decision-making. They bring clarity and focus and consistency to how you make your decisions, particularly when it comes to careers. Aligning your own personal values with the values of a company, an industry, or a particular vocation is very important, because otherwise it will be hard for you to convince that employer that you're really the right fit for them. So you have to know their values, you have to know your values, where they mesh, and be able to explain that in the conversation. So a simple test. And you can pretty much go online and find values. If you just type in values, you can find values checklists all over the place. What I would say is just ask yourself, what are your top 5 values? Are they really yours? And are your career desires and your personal values really aligned? This is something that takes time to think about when you have a little bit of time in the afternoon or in an evening when you're by yourself. Just sit down and try to really flesh out what are your values. In the book, I have a values checklist, but like I said, you can just search them online as well. All right, so the I in Viper. So the V is values, I is intrinsics. And yes, this is a bit of a made-up word because, I'm a psychologist, so I'm allowed to do these things. But the idea is this, when I came up with the idea for intrinsics, it's your intrinsics are what you showed up on this planet with and what you've gained ever since. I like to think of them as your career pacers. So the things that are intrinsic to you that you have within you are things like your personality, your affiliations, your contributions, your experience, certainly relationships, and of course those good old skills, knowledge, and abilities, resume things that you have. It's important to have a grasp of these. Now, I could spend a lot of time talking about these because they're each individually, there's a lot of meat around them. But just to give you a couple that I think are important that I would like you to think about, that I feel people tend to miss. The first one's affiliations. People know of you often before they actually know you. In other words, they'll hear about you, see you on LinkedIn, read a resume, hear from a referral, hear that you're at some group or meeting, and that affiliation will plant a seed in their mind as to who you are and what you're about. So knowing your affiliations is incredibly important because that is how you project yourself out in the world, whether you want to or not. So it's important to take stock of the memberships you have, the associations and clubs you belong to, as well as teams or social groups that you're around, because those things speak about you, and they're always speaking about you. so people understand and associate you with that which you affiliate with. It's incredibly important to understand and know your affiliations and make sure that you have the right affiliations and that you leverage them to the best of your ability. And contributions is another one that gets overlooked. Think of things like whether it's writings, blogs, awards, anything you've been recognized for, stuff that you've done, things that you've given back to your community, white papers, anything that you've contributed out there. Be shameless. It's okay. Pull all that stuff from every part of your life, because that demonstrates your engagement in the world, and it can demonstrate facets of what your abilities are and what you can deliver on. Remember, if you're out there looking for a job or in transition, it is so important to really understand and dig in and pull all the assets you have out and throw them out there. So take the time to think about what your contributions are, how you can package those, and make sure you can tell people about them. In relationships, I always tell people when I say you got to build your WYK network, it's building your who you know network. The fact is very simple. The job market now and has always been about who you know. There is a recent study this year by Career Crossroads that found that 1 in every 10 jobs was acquired or landed through a referral versus 1 in every 200 and some doing some kind of web-based activity. The fact is, you've got to build your network, and you've got to find out how to get in front of people and continue to expand your network of who you know. The job market is totally about who you know, and that's how you're going to get your insight and your inside information. So fire up that old cell phone contact list, pull out your email contacts, look at who you know on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Figure out how you can connect to as many people as possible in a targeted way that are in your world. Because the fact is, you have got to find a way to continue to make these connections and let people know that you are on the hunt. You're looking, but you got to let them know what you're looking for, where and when, and be specific. But execute on that network. You've got to build it. Relationships are so much the key, especially in an environment where we're at 9% unemployment and growing. Again, what I would tell you to do is go back and at least one of these 3 intrinsics that I talked about, or one of the larger list of 7. Pick one that you know you really struggle with, whether it's the affiliations you have, whether it's your personal relationships or network or building skills, whatever it is. Sit down and spend some time and think, what are you going to do to address it? And say by the end of the week, figure out, how am I going to build some better relationships? How am I going to expand my network? How am I going to take stock of where my affiliations are, and do I have the right ones? Spend the time doing it. You'll find it's incredibly valuable. And again, it's all about who you know. All right, so the P in Viper, passions. The reason I leave this as the third in the model, in the 5-step model, is because if you start with passions, like so many people do, you tend to get a little wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and excited, and you realize, where am I going with this? The fact is I think you have to temper the conversation about passions with understanding your values and understanding the intrinsics or assets that you bring to the table. Then you can have, I think, a more reasonable conversation about what you're really passionate about that can also be an income-generating activity. Your passions are really that desire for some type of achievement, distinction, that power, that striving. It's that drive that gets you jumping out of bed in the morning, that makes you overcome being tired. It exhilarates you. It excites you. It makes you feel alive. It makes you feel like you're contributing. You're doing what you want to do. It is so important to understand what your passions are. Think about it as those things that excite you. What fulfills you? What did you want to be when you grow up? That question is far more relevant now than it was when you were a kid, because now you actually know enough to know what really works for me, what really does excite me, but also what is it about work I've done in the past that excites me? What is it about work in the future I want to do that excites me? And I'll tell you right now what is so important. And I had this conversation once at a job fair a number of years ago, where there were maybe, 20 vendors, employers, and thousands of job seekers. Most of the employers there actually didn't have jobs. They were there more to support the fair and trying to show that they're trying to help and be present. One of the fair's public relations persons came up to me and she said, "Woody, give me something I could use for the newsletter, some tip." And I said, and I'd done a lot of different stuff that day, and I said, here's something. I said, people need to learn how to harness their passion and demonstrate it in a focused way that'll get someone else excited and show their true passion and excitement for what they want to do in that job they want. She looked at me, she said, "Oh, come on, tell me something that I can use that's of value." And I said, "Really?" And it just so happened that the vice president in charge of talent recruitment for a major rental car agency happened to be standing behind us. And he walked over and he said, "I couldn't help but overhear the conversation." And she said, "Oh yeah, maybe you could give me something that'll help." And he looked at her and he said, "Let me tell you something. I look around here. I have very few jobs to give out. And I've got thousands of people." She's like, "I can't even remember most everyone that comes up to the line that comes to talk to me. But the people I do remember are those that demonstrate a passion for customer service." She said, "Because I have got to get people that I'm going to stick behind a counter. They're going to get yelled at, deal with crazy people on their vacation, angry business travelers who are running late." And he said, "I've got to have someone who really wants to help and has that drive and desire to make it right for the customer." And he said, "When I see that in somebody, that excites me, and that's who I pick." So needless to say, passion is important. I think people forget about it. Sometimes they think of it as more of this intangible. It really isn't. So do yourself a favor. Spend a little time. Identify at least 3 passions. Just think out of the box, across the board. Then think about which ones could you really viably turn into a career pursuit. Which ones could you align with actually going out there, either landing a job or creating some kind of job opportunity for yourself. And the fourth one. So the E in the Viper model is essence. If you can answer the question, what are my values? The question, what are my intrinsics or intrinsic assets? And the question of what are my passions? You've basically answered the question of what is my essence or what are you about? That's what I talk about when I talk about essence. There are a lot of folks out there that like to talk about personal branding. And they like to talk about how to impose a brand on you, create or project something that you're not, or look interesting or different, repackage yourself, whatever. My training's in psychology, and I come at it from a very different perspective. You can't be something that you're not and sustain it. A true brand comes from your essence. It's drawing on the essence of who you are and projecting that in a focused, smart way. So when you think about a brand, your brand is, what do people know about you? What is it you represent? What is it that makes you different? Essentially is, what is the package of you? What is that you brand, that you package that other people perceive? And it's important to do what I call in the book a brand audit. It's figure out, what is that package right now from the perspective of others out there, in particular employers or potential customers or clients? And is it the right one? Are you projecting the right package? Does it do you justice? Take, for example, these brands. Most anybody could probably name the catchphrases. As soon as you see this logo, it says something to you. UPS, what can Brown do for me, right? Nike, just do it. Maxwell House, good to the last drop. Allstate, you're in good hands, right? Every one of these, when they jump out at you, you see it, it says something to you, it speaks to you. I want to do the same thing for you. You need, when people think about you, when they see you, when they hear about you, your brand needs to jump out at them. They need to go, Dr. Woody, organizational psychologist, author of the U-Plan, helps people get back to work, helps people look inward, introspection, bam, right? They got to look at you, they got to know. And in order to do that, you really have to create that package and be very deliberate. But that package comes from knowing your values, knowing your intrinsics, knowing your passions, and being able to harness those and project them in a way that people get and understand, and so they will think of you just as they'll think of UPS when they need to ship something. Here's the interesting challenge. Now, when I talk to a lot of my branding gurus and friends, they'll laugh and they'll say, because they like to take a product and impose a brand on it. And I made that point, you can't do it. Tiger Woods is a fantastic example of an imposed brand. Most people on the PGA Tour, they knew who he was. They knew about all of his stuff that was going on. It was the general public where Nike and Phil Knight wanted to create and project this brand because they wanted to be able to sell him to the consumer. And who is the consumer out there? 80% women, 80%, I think, around middle age or so, who are going to buy the stuff for their kids or their husband. They wanted to create and project an image of who he is to that consumer. The problem is if it's not really a reflection of you, it will never last. And we all know what happened with the meltdown. You can't be something that you're not and do it for a long period of time. On the flip side, Rachel Ray, who I have the other picture up there, this is a woman who is who she is and will never apologize for it. My favorite quote from her is, I am not going to be a size 0. I'm a cook. I'm not a model. And I think it's wonderful because everything she does, everything she says, everything about her is a projection of herself. She knows herself, puts it out there, and is very comfortable with it. That's the difference between projecting a brand based on your essence versus having a brand projected on you. So at the end of the day, make sure to live your brand. You have to do that brand audit. You got to think about, do the way I dress, my style, who I'm around, the places I go, is this a reflection of me? Is it deliberate? Am I deliberately being myself? Because the key to a brand is this. It's very simple. A brand's a promise. It's a promise you make. And that promise has to have credibility. It has to demonstrate your value and show what makes you different. And if you can't do that, you're not going to stand out from the crowd. You won't be memorable. You won't be the go-to person. So the R in roadmap, or is roadmap. Once you know your values, intrinsics, and passions, and you've been able to create a brand package based on that, that's nice. It's great. It's wonderful. I'm glad you've done all the introspection, but this is all academic unless you actually take it to market. And so the key is, how do you take this and draw a roadmap with it? Now, one of the key differentiators of the U plan, and my whole point behind it was so many career books out there and so much career advice is about activities and busy work and things to do and processes. Before you get into all that, you really have to do the hard introspective work. And I think that's the mistake most people make, is they don't sit down and do the hard thinking about values, intrinsics, and passions. They don't figure out how to take that and create a brand package before running out there and shotgun blasting resumes down the street or online. So once you've done this, then it's time to go and start thinking about, how do I get it out there? The reality is this. You have to set direction. Without direction, you're not going to get anywhere. If you get in your car and you don't know where you're driving to, guess what? You're not going to end up anywhere, at least anywhere that you want to. Set short-term goals. Be able to check yourself along the way. Always take stock of whether I'm still moving forward towards my goal. It doesn't have to be a perfect straight line. It could zig and it could zag, but make sure you're not going backwards. Always identify multiple avenues. Remember this, there are a multitude of ways to get to the same destination. You have to pick the ones that make sense for you. Don't necessarily follow the route that someone else has taken. One of the biggest mistakes people make is read someone's autobiography and try to emulate them. You are not them, you are you. You have to figure out what works for you. And then set milestones. Be proud when you hit your goals. Know how to measure those goals. Give yourself that pat on the back and give yourself the rewards, because it's important to reinforce yourself as you move forward. Again, if you jump in the car and you don't have a roadmap or you don't know where you're going, guess what? You're going to waste a lot of time spinning your wheels. And that's, again, why I say it's so much about doing that introspective part first. One little tip that I love to give people, especially if you're making a transition to a new industry, a new career, something very different, go find the people who have the job that you want and immerse yourself in their world. You can't be remote about it. You can't be on the outside looking in if you want to get into an industry. Find out where they hang out, where they go to happy hour, what groups do they belong to, what clubs or teams do they go to, what professional associations or professional meetings or groups or conferences do they go to. Go find those people, immerse yourself in their world, get to know them, make new colleagues, understand their language. Try to seek out some type of mentor in that world, because you have to be in and part of it before they'll recognize you as a potential person of value or someone that they would want to employ or bring into their world. You have to find a way to immerse yourself in it. It is so incredibly important. And then, of course, social recruiting. Another important tidbit I think is always that everyone's got to know. And by virtue of the fact that you're at the America Hires job fair, you already probably are aware of this. And of course, if you're using anything on JobsDirect, you understand that, you have to be out there, you have to be looking online, you have to be using your social media, but leverage those tools, especially when it comes to Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Make sure you understand them. Make sure you use them to reach out and continue to maintain and build your networks of friends and let them know who you are, what you're about, but be deliberate about it. Before you start making any campaigns, whether it's online, whether it's in person, whether it's through friends, whether it's at conferences, make sure you have that package together. Make sure you have a coherent message so that people get you, they understand what you're about, what you're looking for, and they hear you and understand you, and they will remember you. The fact is simple. The only way to create certainty during uncertain times is to create a plan. My point here is just to give you a very simple overview of what I talk about in my book, which is creating a U plan. The idea is to give you questions to ponder and think about with a lot of different prompts so that you can start saying, here's how I'm going to create a plan for me that's about me, that's for me, that'll help bolster what I'm trying to accomplish. We all spend so much time planning for trips, planning for bosses, planning for meetings. Guess what? At the end of the day, I don't find that people spend enough time planning for themselves. People don't spend enough time creating a U plan. And I think that is critical, especially in this challenging marketplace. So feel free to contact me, ask any questions. You can find me at drwoody.com, or you could follow me on Twitter at Dr. Woody, or you could hit me up on Facebook. Just look up Dr. Woody. I'm all over the place and always willing and interested to hear any feedback, any questions. Like I said, just go to my website at drwoody.com. You can find out information on how to contact me. And again, thank you so much for participating. I certainly appreciate everyone taking the time to hear me out. And good luck in your search.